one topic I wanted to get to before we closed was you were talking about listening and the importance of listening, and I thought that was a great point. Can you tell us more about what that means to you?
Yeah, the one of the things I've been really harping on my guys about, especially in the long term, is that most men when they go in, and they're just most people aren't even aware this happens, but most guys when they go in don't actually listen to people. They don't actually listen to the people they're talking to, and there's a difference between hearing and listening. You hear the words, but you don't actually listen. And the reason why, and I know this because I did this for years, is because you're thinking of what to say next.
Mm-hmm.
You're not actually absorbing what's going on. You're trying to formulate the next piece. You're trying to come up with the next witty thing. And that occurs because, we've been conditioned into it. It occurs because you're nervous, because you're running out of things to say. For whatever reason, and there's a lot of them, you're trying to formulate the next thing. And what happens is that there's several repercussions that occur because of that. The first is that when you think of what to say, you generally don't think of something good. Because if you're thinking of what to say, you're kind of cutting off the creative side. It's the reason why it's pretty difficult to do algebra and paint a picture at the same time.
Nice.
Like, generally, women have 40% more connective tissue, supposedly, in the left and right hemispheres, right? Supposedly, that means that, they're better at multitasking. And it's what enabled them to take care of the kids and fend off the lion and all that other stuff, right? But as guys, we're pretty, focus-centered on one thing. So if what that means that when you start going analytical, you have a very tough time going creative, as a general kind of rule. And if you want to test that, go out and try to do mental math in your head, and then try to say something creative, so try to freestyle or do something, right? It's really, really hard. So when you think logically of what to say logically, you disengage the creative side, and the what makes that so bad is that when you're trying to have a conversation, that creativity is what makes that happen. It's not the logic. When I banter and I joke around and I say funny stuff, it's not because I'm formulating things in my head logically. It's because I'm invoking the creative side. So when you think of, and this is detailed in psycho-cybernetics, when you think of what to say, what actually happens is that your mind goes blank. Your mind goes blank and you can't think of what to say. And so that's the first thing that just really eradicates your interactions, because people can tell. And the second thing is that when you're thinking of what to say, you're not engaged in the conversation. You're not being present. You're not listening to what she's saying. And if you listen, what you realize is that she's giving you 100 things to talk about. She's giving you all kinds of things to talk about, even if she doesn't say anything. Even if you walk up and you say hello and she just looks at you, she's giving you things to say. Now, you're not listening necessarily in that case in the words she's saying, but you're listening in her body language and what she's wearing. You're observing all these things. And in every boot camp, I get a guy who's talking to a girl and she blurts something out. He might be talking about the Patriots game, and she says, "I think you're really cute." And he doesn't even hear it. He just goes on and on. He's like, "Do you like the Patriots?" And I'm listening on the mics, right? Because I have microphones on all these guys. And I'm listening on the mics from across the room watching this guy. And I'm like, how did he not hear that? She just said, "I think you're really cute." And he just went on talking about the Patriots. And it's because he's thinking of what to say next. And he just completely glosses over it. And he just doesn't hear it. He doesn't hear it at all. And so when you start to listen, you start to realize she's giving you a ton of things to talk about. You can go in and and the greatest example of this is when you're with your friends, when you're with your family, do you think of the next thing to say? When you're talking to them, are you panicking and thinking of the next thing to say? Well, if you're not, and most people aren't, how do you magically come up with something to say?
Right.
How does that happen if you're not panicking and thinking of it? It just magically comes in your head. How does that work? It works because you're listening. Because you're actually engaged in the conversation and you're listening, and when you do that, things just happen to come out.
Right.
And if you can do that then with strangers, then all of a sudden now you're engaged. Now you don't run out of things to say.
Yes. That's great. I mean, because there's a being in your head as being bad. A lot of guys have know what that's like. When they go to the club, they don't know what to do, they're really uncomfortable, and now they just have this running dialogue in their own heads, which makes it worse and worse, and they know what that's like. But that mindset, that mental space is very similar, if not identical, to what's going on when a girl's talking to you or interacting with you, and you're just trying to think of things to say. Because again, you're in your head and you're going back into. I had this recently. I was at a gathering, a social gathering and I didn't know anybody there, and it was just like totally neutral. It was like a family type of thing for somebody, and I'm just chilling out, but I wasn't having fun per se. You know, it was just like at a bowling alley, and I was starting to get in my head like. Oh, you know, when are we gonna go? Or like, what's the next thing? I kind of want to get a drink, you know. And I realized, hey, look, there's so much activity going on around me. I'm not paying attention to any of it. I'm just in my own head. This is horrible. I'm not enjoying life like this. So then I just started observing things, so focusing outside of yourself is a great way. Is one of the best ways to become social. To force yourself into a social mood, instead of just trying to think of what am I going to say or what am I feeling.
Right.
One of the ways that I learned active listening was as a university student, and I noticed that my notes were shit. Like I'd come back from a lecture, and they would not help me study at all. And I realized one of the problems was that I wasn't listening properly. And I thought, because the A students were saying, "Didn't you hear the professor say this?" I'm like, "No." So then I decided instead I was going to repeat what the professor said. I was going to repeat it in my mind, because my problem was I was so in my head that I didn't even know what it felt like to be out of my head, you know, to be out in the world.
Yeah.
So to be in the moment. So instead, I replaced those words that I would just use to talk to myself. I replaced them with my professor's words, and then my notes were awesome. And then I continued to do that, and that from there I extrapolated into dating, which is kind of pathetic because I had to learn how to listen to lectures first. But then when the girl's talking, if my mind's starting to race, like, does she like me, or do I have bad breath, or something like that? Instead, I'll repeat what she's saying, like whatever she's saying, I'm just going to repeat in my head, so that there's like this little echo going on, and that forced me out into her words. And then once that happened, the conversations went much, much better.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like the science that you brought to it. I got to look into that a lot more. The right and left brain. That's a really great way of explaining that. So, what are some ways that you get clients, like train them into this kind of listening? Are there any drills or exercises that you do?
Yeah. So there's actually a lot of drills that we go over to make that happen, to reinforce that. One of the things is I'll give guys a series of pictures, and it's pictures of just random women in a daytime or nighttime scenario, and I'll time them, and I'll make them improvise something to say, and I'll time how long that takes. And sometimes it takes, a second, and sometimes it takes, 10 minutes. I'll just sit there and I'll just time how long it takes. And I'll repeat that drill over and over and over and over again. And then after each picture, I give them their time, and then I tell them, okay, this is what I would have said. And what I try to do is I try to grab pictures that I've never seen before either. So it's both of us. You know what I mean? Both of us have that. And they kind of start to make the associations. They start to realize, oh, he's looking at that, or he's observing this, or he's doing that. And because it's a static picture, they don't sit there in their head as much, at least, because they can start to analyze and look and start to make those connections. And then a lot of the conversation drills that we do kind of reinforce the mental and the neural pathways that we use to make conversation. So we'll drill those over and over and over again, and just like a muscle, your mind gets stronger and faster at those things until you can go out and you can just make conversation, and you can say the right thing effortlessly because you've drilled it so many times. Most people will try to read a book and then go execute. Like no one would give you a book on boxing and then be like, go in a match. Yeah. So you got to drill that and develop that muscle memory so that when you get out there, you have a skill that you can use.
That's awesome. What do you call that drill? Do you have a name for it?
Improvising conversations.
Picture. Okay, so you're using
if I know.
You're using pictures or photographs, and you're getting them to talk about those.
I'm telling him, imagine you've approached this woman, and you said hi, and she said hi. What do you say now?
Okay, but you give them some image to look at.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Hey, man, I don't want this to sound facetious at all, but when I was learning Chinese in Taiwan, there was this really great cram school it was called Taipei Language Institute, and they had this book called Picture Stories, and in Chinese you get this, it's sort of like a big comic book, and they just want you to fill in the story. So they said, okay, now make up the story based on the picture. And it was an amazing way to learn Chinese, like just to activate the creative part of your brain while trying to remember the vocabulary that you've learned and all of that. And I used like some advertisements from GQ and some other magazines to get guys to just say, look, if you were to approach this girl, what would you open her with as a situational opener?
Right.
What I didn't realize is you can use that just for conversation or just to practice your observational skills. That's great. I'm going to steal that from you. I'll have to credit. I'll call that the DJ Fuji drill.
Definitely.
Awesome. So if guys wanted to get coaching from you, how would they get a hold of you?
Mainly just through the blog. They can shoot me an email on the blog. It's the Tao of DJ Fuji,
Awesome.
and TAOOFDJFUJI. And so I've got articles. I've got my contact form there, and if they can shoot me an email. And I offer free phone consultations for guys that are looking for training to kind of get a feel for what's going to benefit them the most, whether they take it out with me or somebody else. A lot of guys are looking for a certain thing. Or what a certain type of coaching is the best for them, but they don't know that. So they just go and they jump into something, and it may not be the right fit. And so that's why we do those phone coaching sessions. Oh,
excellent. So it's a complimentary phone consultation, so you got nothing to lose. And there's a link to your blog from my site, asianrake.com. So if anyone's watching this on that, you can just look on the right sidebar, and there it is. All right, man. It's been a real joy. We covered so much stuff, so thank you so much. And we'll be talking to you soon.
Definitely, man. Likewise. Thank you.